The girl made up her mind to finally confess her feelings to that day. She was certain he had heard what she said. Those words came from her, a childhood friend who always looked away without emotion whenever their eyes met. The girl moved past the boy, mentioning that he was blocking her path. Meanwhile, felt anxious and restless as she prepared to see that morning. Just a few days before, the boy had struggled to stay awake on the subway, exhausted from barely sleeping the previous night. Reacts with irritation whenever anyone greets him with a good morning. A young boy remarked that he seemed to have slept well, though his complexion remained as pale as ever. This was counted among his few close friends. Delicate features often left others unsure of his gender, but he was, in fact, a boy. Despite this, he possessed some qualities that stood out from the typical expectations for men. Expressed his excitement about being in the same class as his friend for a second year. Found's demeanor quite endearing. However, when got too close, instinctively nudged him away, causing his own bag to tumble to the ground. Offered to retrieve it and bent down in an awkward, almost comical. He sits in his chair, his expression sour. The woman mentions an increase in complaints about missing belongings and insists they must stop misplacing things. Then, she cuts off the discussion and announces she's about to summon someone into the classroom. She invited the girl inside. A person enters the classroom. The students couldn't help but notice her striking beauty and the length of her flowing hair, leaving them in awe. As realized who she was, a wave of surprise washed over him. The girl stepped up to the board and carefully wrote her name, sparking a memory in him of a time he had comforted a tearful young girl. Once she completed writing her name, she turned to face the class and formally introduced herself as. With a composed expression, she requested that her classmates treat her kindly. The teacher instructed the girl to take a seat by the window at the rear of the classroom. Glanced over at his friend, concerned, wondering about his well-being, but the friend simply rose from his seat and turned to face the new girl. The boy made an effort to start a conversation with her. The girl demanded that he move aside, leaving bewildered by what was happening. Questioned whether he could hear her, and insisted once more that he move aside. The boy, unsure of how to respond, offers an apology even though he has no idea what just occurred. Laughter fills the classroom as everyone watches his antics. His actions are amusing even though his expression stays sour. In contrast, the boy wishes he could vanish from sight. Once the bell rings and class is over, approaches to ask about what took place earlier. The boy knows wouldn't act like that unless he had a solid reason, and he realizes that is the only one who truly gets him. It turns out that had upset her some time ago and now wants to make amends. When glances at the girl in question, she appears to be seething with anger. The boy remarks to his friend that the girl's glare feels deadly, making increasingly uneasy about the whole. The boy insisted that hear him out, but the refused, wanting no part in the violent conflict. Because he hadn't saved her contact information, he had been powerless to reach out until now. Previously, the boy had wounded her with harsh words at their cram school, and soon after he was transferred away. He spent the intervening time wishing he had apologized. However, it seemed her resentment had only grown stronger. He considered that she might forgive him if he allowed her to hit him, though he wasn't eager to risk his life. At that moment, drew near, closing the distance and fixing her gaze intently on him. Despite her intentions, she becomes sidetracked and stumbles. As she tumbles downward, quickly catches her by the wrist, stopping her from tumbling. He remarks on how narrowly she avoided danger and checks to see if she is all right. The girl yanked her arm back, her face twisted in anger. She fixes her icy gaze on the boy, her eyes full of fierce intensity. Remarks that it looks like everything is over for him now. At the same time, the girl dashes off, clutching her notebook tightly against her chest and struggling to catch her breath. Wonders aloud whether is laughing, and explains that when someone feels down, they sometimes smile without meaning to. Recalled the moment when had insisted he move out of her way. Once that happened, the school day ended before he could speak with her properly. As rain poured down, a stray cat brushed against his leg. Enchanted by its cuteness, wondered if the feline belonged to anyone. The cat wandered into the street just as the traffic light turned green. Suddenly, a truck sped toward the animal. Reacting instinctively, tossed his bag aside and lunged to rescue the kitten. He managed to shield the creature, sparing both of them from harm. Afterward, the cat began to tug at shirt sleeve, making him ponder if it was expressing gratitude, with persistent meows. Compelled by curiosity, the young man begins his ascent. He scans his surroundings, realizing the cat has vanished and questioning whether it left him behind. When he finally arrives at the summit, a massive wooden archway stands before him. A voice calls out to him. A girl, cradling a cat in her lap, turns to the small feline and inquires if that boy was its rescuer. The girl, distinguished by her cat-like ears, then expresses her gratitude to the human. Stands in stunned silence as the girl promises to pause the rain. With a quick snap of her fingers, the falling drops freeze in midair. She gestures for to approach, and then guides him over, both of them gliding through the air. The girl grabbed the boy and tossed him inside a small cottage. Introduced herself as the proprietor of the cat sanctuary. The girl announced her intention to reward the boy for rescuing. However, her intimidating presence made it hard to believe she would truly follow through with her promise. Offered to grant any request the boy might have, assuring him she would fulfill it, but he responded that he had no needs or desires. The cat girl wondered aloud whether he was interested in reconciling with. She reveals to the boys that she possesses divine powers, allowing her to fulfill their wishes effortlessly and without uttering a single word. As she moved closer to, she wondered aloud whether he failed to see how incredible that was. The boy, feeling scared, agrees and thinks she is amazing. After that, begins searching for an item. She soon finds a small ball, picks it up, and offers it to the boy to eat. Unsure, the boy wonders aloud about the mysterious object. The cat girl explained that the unique candy would let the boy listen to the true feelings of people of the opposite gender for an entire day. He struggled to find the right way to apologize to, hoping that this would help him grasp her feelings and learn how to make amends. Wondered aloud whether doubted her, explaining that she obtained her remarkable goods by ordering them from afar. She then passed a manual to, assuring him that he need not be concerned. Just then, the doorbell sounded, prompting to leave the room and collect a newly delivered package. Meanwhile, considered that if this guide could truly reveal feelings, it might make sorting out their issues much simpler. Although listening in on someone's inner thoughts felt like a serious intrusion, after he had put his own safety on the line to rescue a cat, it seemed only fair that he received such a special reward. After some time, came back with concern etched on her face, silently reminding herself that she must prevent the boy from eating the candy. She burst into the room, urgently warning the boy to stay away from the food. Sat with a cat resting on his lap, already munching on the piece of candy. He mentioned that he'd already had something to eat and wondered aloud if something was bothering her. She quickly dismissed his concern, assuring him that everything was fine and there was no need to worry. At that moment, let out a shaky, nervous laugh. The boy wondered aloud about the situation and questioned whether the candy might be past its expiration date. The cat girl reassured him that it was still good, but insisted that he pay close attention. She explained that the actual instruction manual had finally arrived, then set a massive book down on the floor. This edition included crucial new information. She revealed that anyone who consumed the candy would gain the ability to hear the thoughts of people of the opposite gender. However, she warned that using this power came with several important precautions. It was important to remember that if Lot One ever became the recipient of a confession of love, his life would come to an end. Begins to read the second note, but cuts her off before she is able to finish. She emphasizes that his power will remain until he finishes school, warning that leaving early or transferring might be fatal. Additionally, if anyone outside the group learns about his ability, it will result in his death. The most crucial elements lay before them, and it was astonishing to realize that this sweet treat had been crafted by the god of envy. Wondered aloud whether the boy truly felt satisfied, given that these were the only issues he faced. Wondered aloud about the identity of the god of envy, and the girl explained that this deity was consumed entirely by jealousy. The marketplace overflowed with instruction booklets and sweets, none of which held any real significance. It seemed that his strategy involved using the sugary treats to bring an end to romances. On that particular morning, the deity of commerce realized that the candies crafted by the goddess of jealousy contained something hazardous. She was apprehended, and the authentic instruction manual was located in her home and had just been delivered to the scene. Believed that in the end, everyone found their happiness, yet the boy's anger flared at those words. On the other hand, trembled at the thought that someone might confess to him, fearing it could lead to his demise. However, the cat girl dismissed his worries, remarking that hardly appeared to be the kind of person anyone would choose to confess to anyway. She bursts into laughter, prompting to realize that, despite all that has happened, her perspective is correct. Without warning, a sharp ache explodes in his head as the sound of his own voice echoes within his mind. A sharp pain throbbed in his head, threatening to tear it apart, yet he knew this agony was only a temporary side effect of the pill and would fade before long. In the following instant, the boy opened his eyes to find his sister lying across him. Confused, he wondered aloud how he had returned home, but his sister remained silent, uncertain of what to say. She had discovered him unconscious at their doorstep, his face flushed and surrounded by a cluster of cats. Despite not feeling his best, remained resolute about attending school. He fixed his gaze on his sister for a moment, yet she gave no reaction. He questioned why his thoughts remained a mystery to him. It seemed as though his heart held only emptiness, yet a small part of him wondered if there could be more. The experience had only been a dream, and in reality he was nothing more than a total fool. As walked through the entrance of the school, a sudden ache began to throb in his head. In his mind, a voice remarked that the day's class was bound to be dull. The boy glances around, his expression puzzled. Thoughts belonging to the girls nearby become visible to him, their inner voices revealing their emotions. Without warning, he becomes aware of someone thinking about him. The voice came from, she grumbled about the boy blocking her path once more, yet deep down, she was determined to tell him how she felt that day. The boy, caught off guard by her intentions, struggled to accept that she wanted to confess her feelings to him. It seemed unbelievable to him that she might actually care for him. Clearly, she did not dislike him after all. Not long after, thoughts from the cat goddess quietly filled his mind. He feels a deep sense of fear whenever he thinks about admitting her feelings, since accepting a love confession would mean certain death for him. Back when was still in elementary school. Frequently received special treatment from her classmates because of her writing. Everyone around her admired her abilities, expressing their amazement at her remarkable talent. At the same time, focused his attention on his studies. Without warning, walks up to him. The boy wondered aloud whether the girl had left with her friends, but she reassured him that everything was fine. She wonders whether he has completed the book. The boy reaches into his backpack and pulls out a notebook. Wanted to know the boy's opinion, so she questioned him. In response, he admitted that his thoughts matched those of the other girls. Gently took hold of his hand, expressing her desire to hear what he had to say. She was eager to understand his thoughts on the matter. The boy explains that he did not think it was interesting. He hopes she won't get the wrong idea. He simply spoke his mind without holding anything back. A single tear dropped onto the pages of the notebook. Tears streamed down her face as she sobbed uncontrollably. She concluded that, just as she had expected, was the only one who truly comprehended the situation. She expresses her regret. She walked away, tears streaming down her face. After she transferred to a different school, he was left with the lingering belief that she resented him. It seemed that was now planning to confess her feelings to him, leaving puzzled about what had caused her change of heart. In order to grasp everything that was happening, the boy recalls the moment when the goddess warned him that accepting a confession of love would lead to his death. When confessed her feelings for him, it would mark the downfall of his entire world. Trembles with fear and decides that his only option is to seek out the cat goddess for assistance. Upon his arrival, he notices with unease that everything appears to be unraveling. The grand staircase was gone, leaving behind an empty space that now seemed deserted. A cat approached, letting out a soft meow, prompting him to wonder if the animal belonged to an older brother. The boy, feeling desperate, implores the cat to lead him back to the temple they had visited the day before. The kitten let out a soft meow while grumbled, only to be interrupted by a newcomer who remarked that was being much too loud. The cat goddess, feeling tired, lets him know that she needs silence so she can get some rest. His eyes filled with tears as overwhelming emotions took hold, leaving her bewildered by how deeply he longed to see her. The boy addressed her respectfully as Lord Goddess, but the girl corrected him, telling him he could simply refer to her as Princess. Wondered aloud about the dramatic transformation of the temple, prompting to clarify that this was the true temple as it existed in reality. The previous day, she learned that was planning to bring guests, prompting her to put extra effort into making things appear more exciting. Feeling anxious, thought would reveal her feelings soon, while the cat found amusement in the situation. He expressed his confidence, yet the boy revealed that his certainty came from witnessing this truth within her heart. Princess wanted to know if what she had heard was correct, so she posed the question, prompting him to nod in agreement. Desperation overwhelmed the main character as he lowered himself in a pleading bow, imploring her to find a way to remove the power from him. The cat reminded him that, as she had already explained, his power would remain until he graduated from high school, and there was no possible way to change that fact. Admitted that she had been the one to give him the candy and had suggested he try it, so she felt accountable for what happened and believed she should assist him. Princess felt a surge of indignation, knowing that had been the one to sneak the candy without asking. Despite her inability to act, the boy continually pressured her to intervene, believing that her status as a goddess meant she should be able to help. Overcome with anger, raised her voice to express her frustration, insisting that she was powerless to help. She hadn't wanted any of this to happen, nor had she ever planned for such trouble. Yet now he was putting all the blame on her, even though she was nothing more than a small demon. Indicated that he grasped what was going on, and explained that he simply wished to confirm things once more before moving forward. He wondered whether a confession would truly lead to his demise. The girl clarifies that death and life are simply ideas people use, and although a body can perish, the spirit endures. However, she warns that he will not survive. At the moment, needed to keep his distance from. Upon returning home, he was greeted by the sound of laughter drifting through the house. He began to speculate whether his sister had invited her friends over. Begins to share rumors about her brother with others. The boy listens intently, overhearing every sound around him, and realizes that his sister is making remarks about him. Stepped into the house with a huff, his mood souring as he stumbled upon an unforeseen surprise. Greets her brother warmly as he arrives. However, it is who is preparing the food. The main character found themselves puzzled by his unexpected presence. She stands in his kitchen, preparing a meal. The boy turned to his sister, curious about what was happening, and she explained that she had reached out to because she had been wanting to talk with her for quite some time. Always enjoyed the meals prepared. As began to retreat, announcing his intention to head to his room, reached out and grabbed his arm, stopping him. The boy's sister wondered aloud whether he was feeling anxious. He couldn't bring himself to admit any nervousness, knowing that if were to reveal her feelings to him, he felt as though he might not survive the moment. Suddenly, the boy began to notice voice reaching his ears. She considers whether the boy's startled expression is due to her unexpected arrival, especially since now seems more grown-up. She found herself deeply impressed by the boy. At that moment, made up his mind to express his gratitude to her. The girl remarks that his face appears just as uninteresting as usual. After making her comment, she questioned her own actions, puzzled because was, in her eyes, the most attractive boy alive. She found his beauty so striking that merely seeing him left her breathless. Instructed to part his lips and give the food a taste. The boy takes a bite of his food, finding himself pleasantly surprised by how good it tastes. He remarks on the food's great taste. Meanwhile, faces the group and expresses her approval, noting that this is truly enjoyable. The main character notices that she appears to be deep in thought. The pleasantness of the situation brings a genuine smile to their face. She found herself grinning uncontrollably, uncertain of her next move. At that moment, decided to give her a call. When the girl faces him once more, a look of seriousness settles on her features. The boy remained puzzled by the girl's fondness for him, unable to comprehend her feelings. He had always assumed that she disliked him, perhaps no longer remembered what had happened that day. As they ate together, wondered aloud if had once been known for writing love stories. The memory of that day lingers vividly in the boy's mind. He felt a surge of annoyance when his sister mentioned the topic, but calmly explained that she continued to write and was confident she would achieve something. She sets a book down on the table, catching his attention, who recognizes it as a famous romance novel and feels impressed. The girl explains that she is the author of the piece and mentions that she has multiple copies stored at home, allowing her to keep this particular one. Felt delighted and amazed by the present she received. Curious, she wondered if had started a career as a writer, but explained that this was only her first piece and she was uncertain about what might come in the future. Turned to her brother, expressing her amazement and wondering aloud if he felt the same way. He realizes that the name the girl uses is actually an alias. The boy is aware that she has spent many years writing, so he finds it impressive that her romance novel has finally made it onto bookstore shelves. The boy remarks that she possesses incredible talent. At that moment, he recalled how she once claimed her story was nothing special. Thought back to that time, questioning his own actions. The girl explains that she was invited to participate in a conversation and to sign autographs. The chat served as a platform for writers to communicate with each other. 4 writers were invited to participate, 2 established authors and 2 rising talents. She found herself selected as one of the newcomers in this group. Was also expected to join the chat. Almost everyone has heard of, a renowned author whose works enjoy immense popularity. Her novels not only achieve impressive sales, but also reach readers across the globe, with some stories even adapted into films. She had gone so far as to leave her own daughter behind for this, making her mother. Wondered aloud whether had reached out to her, but the girl explained that she hadn't heard from it all since leaving home, except for a single call and email. Then recalled this and asked if the girl's father would be returning that day. Because he refuses, she decides to ask to spend the night at her place instead. Since it was the weekend, there would be no issue if she spent the night there. Realized the girl should turn down the offer and made up his mind to assist her with that decision. He warned not to get into any trouble, but her sister quickly cut him off, demanding that he be quiet. Opened her mouth to speak, but before any words could come out, gently took her hand and gazed at her with an earnest expression. Seeing the silent request in his eyes, nodded in agreement. Reflects on the moment, his pride as an older brother began to fail him. Felt thrilled about having a friend spend the night, while the main character remained preoccupied with the troubling thought that a confession could cost him his life. As night settled in, the boy remained in bed, his thoughts restless due to his presence nearby. Not long ago, the girl had gone to shower, yet found himself curious about what she would wear afterward. He realized that pajamas would probably be too small for her. The boy cut through the man's reflections by switching off the light. At 11 p.m., darkness and silence filled the empty surroundings. Without warning, a sound echoed through the air. Jolted awake, his heart pounding with surprise. He questioned what had just happened, uncertain if the sounds he caught were actually girls talking or simply his imagination. The doorknob began to twist as an unseen person tried to open the door. The boy realized a sudden chill had spread through his body. He became aware that the clock had already struck 4 in the morning. He becomes aware of silent observation, realizing she is thinking about how soundly he is sleeping. The boy kept feigning sleep, all the while questioning inwardly why she had appeared in that place. Noticed how peacefully Coda slept, his expression innocent and unaware that she was secretly watching him. However, she realized she had to return to the room quickly to prevent from discovering what had taken place. Wondered about her outfit, his curiosity piqued by what she had chosen to wear. He opened his eyes, realizing he was only dressed in ordinary pajamas. He had anticipated seeing a more playful expression. The girl settled herself onto the edge of the bed as another figure entered the room. At that moment, she found herself imagining how he might respond if she were to lean in and kiss him. Began to move closer, causing Coda to become overwhelmed with anxiety. It would be the first time he ever experienced a kiss. Discovered without warning that her mother was planning to leave. She attempted to get the woman's attention, yet her mother paid her no heed. The girl wondered aloud about the reason her mother was going away. She explained that her reason was her profession as a writer. Wondered aloud to whether the passion for writing plays was something simply could not let go of. The boy wondered about her reasons for deciding to write a novel at that moment. The girl expresses her curiosity about the reasons her mother chose to continue writing instead of staying with their family. In that instant, promised his unwavering support for her writing endeavors. He enjoyed reading the stories she created. The girl promised she would complete her writing shortly and allow him to read it, once she finished. Whenever Cuda reflected on that, appeared anxious, her demeanor suggesting she feared what others might say. He awoke from a dream filled with memories of the past. Stood nearby, her thoughts swirling with curiosity about whether the boy would realize if she leaned in and kissed him. The situation seemed utterly absurd. Without warning, his voice reached out to get attention. The girl begins to feel anxious about the possibility of someone discovering her inside his room. She fears that might suspect her of having inappropriate intentions. The main character feels anxious, realizing that if his sister discovers her in that predicament, he might end up getting blamed as well. As stepped completely into the room, her eyes landed on the bed, where nothing but a blanket was visible. After closing the door, she wondered how intriguing it would be if happened to be inside her brother's room. Gently drew beneath the blanket with him. The girl felt a surge of fear at the possibility that the bed belonged to the boy. Sensing her distress, the boy quickly took hold of her arm and led her away to escape the uncomfortable moment. She questions inwardly whether the boy has remained awake the entire time. Quietly requested that she remain silent, quickly inventing a story that she had only been sleepwalking. It seemed she had accidentally wandered into his room, which could create trouble if discovered her presence. To avoid this, he quickly concealed her there. Decides to play along with the story, acting as if she truly believed that was his room. At that moment, was likely on the first floor, making it the perfect opportunity for to leave unnoticed. The girl approached him and began to speak, explaining that she needed to share something important with him. The main character recalls the rule that if anyone admits their feelings to him, it will lead to his death. He felt unsure how to react, torn between blocking out the noise or finding a way to quiet the girl himself. If nothing changed, it seemed certain he would lose his life lying right there in that bed. Expresses regret for her sudden departure and acknowledges that she left without offering any explanation. At that time, she made an unexpected choice to move to a different school due to her father's work assignment. Despite having opportunities to reach out and ways to contact him, she chose not to, and now she regrets her silence, wishing she could say she's sorry. Feels uncertain, unsure of how to respond. The girl's body grew tense as she wondered if her unexpected story had unsettled him. Without warning, a sharp pain surged through his head. He experienced the identical ache that had overwhelmed him during his collapse at the temple. Gently reached out, her hand brushing against the boy's cheek as she silently wondered about the cause of his distress. In that instant, the discomfort faded away. The blanket is gently tugged upward by an unseen hand. Stands in the room, confusion clear on her face. She notices that although two people are lying in the bed, their clothes remain untouched, showing no indication that anything intimate has occurred. Refused to crawl beneath the blanket, while her brother never pulled anyone into his bed. Because of this, the only explanation was that had wandered in her sleep and somehow ended up beside him. After coming to that certain conclusion, her mood noticeably brightened. Without hesitation, she took hold of his arms and hurriedly pulled her out of the room. Before she departs, she lets her brother know that, in her opinion, he is the most unpleasant sibling. Slipped her feet into her shoes, preparing to head out. She offered an apology for heading out before breakfast, but assured her that it was no problem and welcomed her to return whenever she wished. Decides that, at least for the time being, she will ask her brother to gather more of the soup they had the previous night. Meanwhile, his mind drifts to the thought of encountering Coda asleep each evening. The boy suggests accompanying the girl to her house, while his sister reminds him to find his way back without any trouble. Wondered aloud whether his house was a long distance away, but reassured him by pointing out that it was very close. The boy, however, found himself puzzled by her definition of right there. She gestured toward the house next door, prompting to mention that no one lived there. The girl explained that she had just moved into that vacant house. The previous evening, she visited her home in search of some pajamas. She offered him a warm smile before turning away, entrusting the boy with the responsibility of looking after her from that moment forward. Her childhood friend had moved in next door, becoming her neighbor. The boy felt lost and uncertain, convinced that destiny had marked him for death. At the moment, he feels drawn to visit the cat temple, believing that answers to his questions await him there. Lies sound asleep, unaware as the boy's voice reaches out to her. The girl gazes at him, prompting to inquire about the manual book. In response, the cat shifts its attention to the opposite direction. Princess expressed her frustration, feeling that he never offered her anything yet constantly demanded favors, which fueled her dislike for humans. Mentioned that he would bring cat food for her next time, prompting the girl to request Chiru. Then explained that the manual contained several new details, but noted that many sections remained impossible to understand. Precaution number 4 referred to a strong attraction toward the opposite sex, along with overwhelming feelings that often led to severe headaches. There was a real possibility that his condition might deteriorate to the point of death, if everyone despised him. If were to take action, he would lose his life as well, which would be an even more tragic outcome. Expressed this concern. Regardless of the circumstances, relocated with the intention of finding a serene and comfortable life. Through her crystal ball, she observes the boy's movements and listens to the words that come from him. She is aware of every event that occurs whenever he enters the room or uses the bathroom. However, they realized that any unusual actions were out of the question, since if he tried anything, she would expose it to everyone. Regardless, he only had to watch himself when it was just him, and that was simple enough for him. After all, he managed well with just a single friend, knowing that being surrounded by a big crowd would only cause him problems. Against the odds, found a way to rekindle his determination. That morning, the boy quietly pushed open the door, wanting to see if she had already left for school. He realized that by delaying his morning departure, he could avoid crossing paths with her and continue this routine throughout the remainder of high school. Simultaneously, a door nearby began to move. The door swung open and dashed outside. The girl stumbles, yet she quickly regains her balance. She managed to keep her balance and adjusted her hair while standing in front of the boy. She greeted him with a cheerful good morning and pretended she hadn't noticed his presence, even though she was fully aware he was there. The girl considers how attending school alongside him feels rather enjoyable. A wave of nostalgia washed over him as he gazed at, who quickly averted her eyes to avoid his glance. Feeling anxious under his gaze, she finds her friend stepping forward to offer support. Wonders to herself about the reason the boy is riding the train so late at night. He attempted to explain his actions, yet insisted that it should not continue for more than 3 days. She moves closer to, questioning his connection to once more. Quickly retreats, denying any involvement, though the memory resurfaces in his mind. He had explained to that was once his childhood friend and that she supposedly disliked him. In truth, did not actually harbor any hatred toward him. Felt a wave of nervousness, even though he reminded himself that was just another boy. Without warning, an individual collided with them. Suzuki observes with frustration that the train has become much more crowded with new passengers lately. Notices that his friend's hand is uncomfortably near and expresses his discomfort through a complaint. The main character's anxiety grows, while suddenly becomes overwhelmed with panic. Both individuals retreated a few paces, concern etched across their faces as they assessed the troubling scene before them. She requested that he refrain from making those charming jokes. The boy thought back to the moment when he had made contact with a significant part of his body, feeling a sense of amazement at the experience. The main character reassured everyone by saying there was no need for concern, since both of them were curvy men. Began to feel anxious, wondering whether he had accidentally revealed his inner thoughts. At the same time, realized that lips hadn't moved at all, leading him to the conclusion that he was somehow able to hear thoughts directly. Princess had explained that the tiny orb would allow him to listen in on the thoughts of girls. Felt uneasy, certain that was a boy despite his appearance. Worried silently, aware that if he wasn't cautious, he could unintentionally expose the secret that he was actually a girl. Since the train is packed with people, the two are forced to stand very near each other. Questions in his mind whether will keep him safe. At this point, he faced the challenge of relying on both friends in order to make it through. At the same time, the feline princess enjoyed a peaceful nap, while another school day unfolded, assisted with his stretching exercises, had previously warned to steer clear of. Despite this advice, still found himself with only a single companion. The following day, he realized for the first time that was, in fact, a girl, meaning they were not simply two boys. Considered that up to this point, remained unaware of who she really was. The main character felt uncertain about the reasons behind her decision to conceal her gender, though that mystery did not trouble him the most. What truly occupied his thoughts was whether harbored any feelings for him. Meanwhile, had already been established as a distinct personality. By herself had already seemed like a significant challenge. Traded spots with and requested his assistance to help her stretch. Felt relieved, believing that wasn't likely to confess any feelings for him. Even so, he reminded himself that was still a girl, and there remained a possibility that emotions could develop between them, so he resolved to stay cautious around her. As helped with the stretches, protested that he was hurting her back. When she glanced at him, it seemed to as if he'd been struck by Cupid's arrow. Noticing his odd reaction, questioned what was wrong, but he brushed it off as nothing. Found himself uncertain about how he would handle things if he started to fall for her. Begins to sweat, quickly grabbing the blanket and wrapping it tightly around herself. Uncertainty fills her mind as she questions what's happening. She questioned in her mind whether had discovered her. The girl felt a wave of panic after the boy realized her true identity. Considered how small cherries were, yet he knew for certain they existed. Confused, he struggled with whether to acknowledge her as a girl or act as if it made no difference. At the same time, worried about the consequences if she ended up suspended from school, especially since she had just formed a new friendship. When classes began, she greeted, and the two of them started walking side by side. The main character recalled witnessing her vulnerability and thought there was still time to make things right. With that in mind, he turned back toward the listener's door. He calls out too, announcing his presence with a loud voice. She was noted for the impressive size of her chest muscles. Wondered whether he had truly been unaware, and if he genuinely believed it was only her strength. Deciding what to do next, she told herself she had to behave with the determination and toughness of a bull. She explained that, because of her slim figure, she had begun working on building her muscles the week before. As she started to notice improvements, she felt very pleased with her progress. Wondered aloud if he was interested in getting a better view of her muscles. Suggested that, since they were both boys, it was fine for them to compare each other's muscles. Without waiting for a response, she yanked the blanket away to reveal herself to him. Hurried away, explaining that he had to return to class, and promising that they would meet her again soon. After shutting the infirmary door behind him, he left the girl feeling confused and uncertain, as if something significant about her identity had slipped away. Instructed to feel her muscles, prompting her to notice that he was now averting his gaze, which left her silently questioning his reaction. She gently guided his hand to rest against her chest. Then she observed the size of his hand, realizing it was much larger than she had expected. She understood in that moment that she could no longer conceal the truth. From the moment she first laid eyes on him, she found herself growing fond of him. Jolted awake, his voice echoing through the room as he cried out in terror from the nightmare. His sister walked into the room, holding a baseball bat in her hands. Concerned, she looked around and wondered aloud if someone had broken in and what had happened to her brother. The boy quickly reassured her, explaining that nothing had happened and that he had only been startled by a bad dream. The unit playfully teased someone while acting adorable. He assured her that there was no reason to be afraid, and she took a moment to think about his words. Believed that being kind to him now would make future requests smoother. As he washed the dishes, he thought about how he preferred to spend the weekend resting in bed rather than going out. Without warning, his name appeared on his phone as she tried to reach him. The boy picked up the phone and suggested that, since he had no other plans for the day, they could go out together for a bite to eat. Felt a wave of nervousness, but still decided to go along with the plan for burgers. The girl had casually asked the boy to come inside, but he remained completely unaware of her true intentions. He struggled to make sense of the situation, his recent nightmare lingering in his mind. Ultimately, he reassured himself that such a frightening scenario could never actually happen. Later stood outside the burger shop, waiting as people bustled past. As girls walked by, their thoughts echoed in his mind, each one revealing itself to him. Although he used to feel bad about listening in, those feelings had faded, replaced by a sense of amusement at the constant stream of thoughts. While was still on her way, he decided to pass the time with some amusement. Over the past few days, he had gained new insights into how that ability worked. It seemed that his power worked only within a certain distance, allowing him to pick up thoughts only as far as sound could naturally travel. When an obstacle stood in the way, the thoughts became faint and difficult to catch. The strength of the mental voices also changed depending on how close or far away the source was. Initially, he believed that louder thoughts meant the person liked him more, but he soon realized that wasn't accurate. Instead, he discovered that the intensity of the voice matched the strength of the person's emotions. Arrived and called out to, catching his attention. The main character immediately noticed cuteness despite her efforts to disguise herself as a boy. After purchasing burgers together, they left the restaurant. Although the truth about was known, she remained unchanged in size. Then asked where they should sit and felt a sense of relief wash over him. His composed manner helped put him at ease. Regardless of her gender, simply wanted to stay connected with his friend as he always had. The two of them found a place to sit and began eating together. At that moment, pointed out a girl nearby, indicating that she was his type. She had chosen to wear tights, something had previously mentioned he found appealing. Wonders whether wearing tights under shorts is acceptable. At the same time, reflected on how he had always assumed was a boy, which led him to speak in ways he never would have if he'd known she was a girl. The boy overhears a voice in his mind, mentioning an intention to take something away. As he turns to look, curiosity fills his eyes. An employee attempted to wave away a persistent fly, but the insect darted closer instead. His presence startled the girl, causing her to stumble and fall back in fright. Quickly reaches out and supports her, preventing her from collapsing onto the floor. He manages to steady her just in time and feels relieved that she was spared from falling. Despite this, the girl grows uneasy, realizing that his hands are pressing against her chest. Only then does become aware of where his hands are and what he is doing. The girl recalls inviting him out as they did in the past, but she worries that if he continues to behave this way, she won't be able to cope. Notices that the whole thing happened unintentionally, explaining to himself that he only acted on impulse to keep her from falling. This was a problem, since if the truth came to light, she would become upset with the other girl. The girl observed his unusual reaction and suspected that he might have uncovered her secret. The boy quickly realized he needed to let her go and behave normally until could regain her composure, just as suggested they all eat a hamburger. His face flushed with embarrassment, making it impossible for her to meet his eyes. She worried that he probably thought she was odd now. To shift the atmosphere, the main character remarked that eating hamburgers could be nice sometimes and attempted to spark a conversation, but remained silent, too, to reply. Everything had been going smoothly until that moment. Suddenly, teacher arrived, explaining that she had seen them through the window and decided to join them. She observes that seems to have formed a good relationship with. The boy realizes that she is aware of his true gender. Because the girl concealed her real gender, she risked being expelled from the school. If secret were to be uncovered at school, it could cause serious trouble. He is eager to uncover who truly is beneath her. Meanwhile, the girl finds herself puzzled by the teacher's presence, since this should be her day off, and she had mentioned planning to rest in her room. Is taken aback when he realizes that the teacher is actually a maid. In the classroom, that teacher always appears lost in thought, and is the only one who seems annoyed by this behavior. Now that he understands the relationship between maid and mistress, it feels oddly unsettling to him. As his headache intensifies, moves closer to, and quietly informs her that the boy has already discovered her. Stood frozen, realizing the teacher had discovered that he was aware of his real identity. Upholding her family's custom, disguised herself as a boy to attend the all-boys school. If anyone uncovered the truth, she would be forced to leave and enroll in a school for girls. The thought of this deeply unsettled. He struggled to understand why his family maintained such a tradition, and wondered why transferring to a girls' school would be so undesirable for her. At that particular school, every young lady was required to be constantly accompanied by her maid, a rule that would affect freedom. The situation implied that would have to remain with indefinitely. Speculated whether the teacher's constant sternness toward him stemmed from jealousy over his relationship with. As watched, she noted to herself how attractive the girl looked that day. The thoughts of the woman took by surprise as he read them. The woman moved closer too, her mind lingering on the scent of the girl's shampoo. Caught off guard, turned to the maid, uncertain if the woman had just tried to smell her. Observing the interaction, sensed that the woman posed a threat. Without warning, seized by the arm, her mind set on taking her. Although she acted as if everything was normal around him, deep down she understood that this would be the final time they would see each other. The only option left to persuade that's true identity remains a mystery to him is a single, decisive course of action. Before leaving, summoned to the bathroom, feeling uncomfortably full from all the soda he had consumed. Observing his behavior, the maid concluded that only a boy would act with such disregard for manners, reinforcing her suspicion that was actually male. With this, the previous justification for transferring to another school no longer applied. Informed the woman that she intended to accompany to the bathroom, however, had not considered what their next step should be. Once inside, they both stood by the urinal pretending to use it. Mentioned that he would exit if decided to leave first. Expressed regret for having invited him along. After leaving the bathroom, all the confusion between them appeared to be cleared up. However, continued to believe was a boy. Grateful for his help when she nearly slipped, expressed her appreciation. Remarked that she was fortunate to avoid injury. In response, took his hands and promised to help him if anything happened in the future. Expressed his gratitude and the two parted ways. Just then, a cat showed up, prompting to greet. Wondered aloud if the kitten had come by out of concern for him. The cat appeared disheartened, prompting to wonder about the cause of his sadness. It turned out the cat had no chance to relax, as another wave of turbulence was already on its way. Earlier, had gone to see how the little creature was doing, but it appeared to be unwell. The boy sensed unease creeping over him, reminding himself to stay alert until he reached home safely. When he arrived at its house, he noticed a black car parked out front. A staff member questioned whether the woman truly intended to surrender. She places her hand on the car, revealing her fear through her trembling voice. Realizes that the person approaching is. The maid caught sight of the boy and wondered about his identity. Explained that he lived next door. Curious, he inquired if the woman present was mother. Recognizing, recalled meeting him before and remarked on how much he had grown, noting how handsome he had become. She smiled warmly as she spoke. She placed her hand gently on his cheek, then quickly apologizing and remarking that he was still just a boy. Questioned whether had come to visit, but the woman insisted she was only passing through and was now on her way out. Since had left home, there had been no communication between her and her daughter, not even a single email. Likely felt utterly isolated. Wanting to help reunite with, requested that the woman remain patient and wait. He urges her to seek out, even if only briefly, but she responds by shaking her head in refusal. Feels uncertain, convinced that taking this action is not within her rights. The car sped off, taking her with it, while watched helplessly. She wonders aloud whether the cat feels concerned about, then reassures the animal that there is no need for fear, promising she has no intention of capturing or harming him. Despite everything, the cat continues to look forlorn, which makes worry. Thinking that the cause must be something different, chooses to visit the cat temple rather than return home. At the cat palace, instructed the kittens to take food machines and deliver the money to her. Observing this, the boy questioned her actions. The girl responded by explaining that she had no other options, since even with a well-made donation box, she barely received 1 or 2 yen each week. In response, the boy opened his wallet and handed her a 50-yen coin. The girl then mentioned that the manual now included additional safety instructions, as it had recently been updated. She announced that she would read aloud the most important warnings. One key point stated that a 10-second countdown would appear just before any imminent declaration. She wondered whether the numbers might unexpectedly show up before him or manifest in some similar way. When he spots the countdown, he attempts to stop the deadly fate approaching him. He realized that acting quickly when the numbers appeared could stop the confession from happening. It occurred to him that the countdown might actually show that the god of envy possessed some compassion. The cat-eared girl expressed her unease about the precaution, finding it somewhat troubling. Wondered aloud whether that wasn't a good thing. In response, Princess urged him to imagine the situation as if he were the one experiencing it. He is struck from behind by an axe, causing his death. The possibility of being confronted head-on by an attacker loomed in the boy's mind. He wondered which situation frightened him the most. Reveals that he feels fear whenever an attack comes directly toward him. The god of envy had designed the candy to make its users experience the terror of facing death, which explained the presence of those crucial seconds. Noticed the kitten looking sad, so he gently stroked its head to comfort it. He reassured, reminding him that as long as he avoided any declarations, he would remain safe despite the dangers. Grateful for the reassurance, the boy expressed his thanks to the cat princess and announced his intention to go home. Just before he left, warned him that she sensed something was wrong and urged him to stay alert. Returned to his house and stepped inside, expressing regret for arriving later than expected. As he listened, a recognizable voice caught his attention, prompting him to glance upward, where he spotted standing at the top of the staircase, her gaze fixed on him. The main character wondered to herself what had brought her back to this place once more. When the tickets for the autograph session finally arrived, she decided that should be the first to receive them. The boy realized that the uneasy sensation must have belonged to the cat princess. The boy realizes this is the first occasion he has seen dressed in casual clothes since the beginning of school. Her outfit is exceptionally pretty, complemented by her tights. Finds himself puzzled as he has a fondness for tights. He now understands that his uneasy feeling was not related to the autograph event, but rather to seeing the tights. Stared into the crystal ball, feeling a surge of irritation at how foolish was acting. Back when attended elementary school, his father was involved in an accident that took his life, leaving the family without him. Remained unaware of the exact nature of his mother's profession, though he understood that she was someone who saved lives. Following their father's death, their mother became increasingly absent from home, often leaving in charge of his younger sister. In his mother's frequent absences, felt a strong responsibility to set a good example for his sister. Eventually, their mother arranged for a maid to help look after them, but whenever the maid appeared, would break into tears, insisting that their mother was being replaced. Due to some emotional state, requested that their mother no longer hire a babysitter. From then on, meals were only brought to the house by delivery services. The boy put effort into lifting his sister's spirits, sharing amusing stories from school and mentioning the latest anime trends, but none of these attempts managed to make smile. On one occasion, their mother presented each child with a necklace. His face brightened at the thoughtful gift, and after that day her mood seemed to improve significantly. Later, when returned home, he discovered expressing regret for coming over uninvited. Appeared and remarked that had arrived home later than usual, despite it being his turn to handle. Smiled warmly, letting him know that he was still welcome to assist her with the remaining preparations. Experienced a sense of guilt for eating their food, though reassured her that there was more than enough to share. Realized that had mentioned a signing session earlier, which likely took place on the same day as the current conversation. The thought crossed mind that she needed to invite to the event, and this intention had prompted her visit. Soon understood that this was the uneasy feeling had sensed. Recognized that she should bring up the signing session with, but fear made her hesitate. Felt sympathy for, yet believed it would be best if he did not attend. While was busy washing the dishes, came over to assist. Just as the conversation was about to continue, noticed something unexpected. Claiming there was a crisis due to the empty snack supply, she insisted someone needed to buy more right away. Without hesitation, she urged to accompany the other person, giving her a gentle push. Filled with excitement, hoped this errand would help bring the pair closer. At the same time, Cuda expressed discomfort about the chilly weather. The group set out together toward the market. The girl realized this was her chance to invite him. She planned to ask him as soon as they finished crossing the street. After considering the possibility of being invited once they crossed the bridge, realized he no longer expected her to ask him. Instead, he turned his attention to the landscape around him. Wondered aloud about his sudden halt, prompting the girl to hesitate before explaining that a memory had just come to her. He realized that his necklace had gone missing at that very spot. The necklace had, in fact, belonged to. Buddha explained to her that he had lost it during their game, which left the girl eager to find out what would happen afterward. Whether had been in tears or had worn a smile, his memory failed to recall. The boy remembered that in the end, he explained the events to. It seemed that others treated her that way because she always appeared odd and never smiled, resembling an unusual doll. At that moment, stood on the ledge, watching as her necklace slipped from her grasp and plunged into the water below. When she arrived home, tears streamed down her face. Meanwhile, hurried off toward the lake. He waded into the water, searching intently for the missing necklace. Beneath him, he found nothing but slippery mud and hard stones, and he struggled to keep his balance as he searched. He wished that his necklace matched hers, so he could offer it to his sister. Continued his search relentlessly, which left his hands painfully scraped. Eventually, a voice broke the silence, inquiring about what he was trying to find. Standing behind the boy was, who remarked that it had been some time since their paths had crossed. The two had once shared many games together, but their friendship faded away after the boy lost his father. The girl stepped into the lake, her movements cautious yet curious. Wondered aloud if the boy was searching for hidden treasures beneath the water's surface. The boy shook his head, clarifying that he wasn't there to play any games. Sister had misplaced her necklace at that spot, and despite his efforts, he was unable to recover it. Eventually, abandoned his search and emerged from the water, feeling defeated. However, offered to assist him in looking for the necklace a bit longer. With a storm predicted to arrive the following day, they knew that failing to find the necklace before then would mean it was lost for good. Attempted to reach out to, but he was overwhelmed with emotion and preferred solitude, tears streaming down his face. He felt deeply embarrassed after witnessed him like that, so he hurried back to his house by himself. He entrusted every emotion he had to his necklace. When he returned to his house, he found the girl seated on the floor with tears streaming down her face. She notices her brother and wants to know if he has come across her missing necklace. The boy stands nearby. Joy expressed regret, explaining that he was unable to help. Tears began to fall, her sobs filling the quiet room. Offered his own necklace, hoping it might comfort her, but shook her head, longing only for the return of her lost necklace. Seeing so heartbroken made his eyelids grow heavy, exhaustion settling in. He wished to appear strong for her sake, yet maintaining that proved more challenging than he expected. His pain seemed overwhelming. Without warning, the sound of the doorbell echoed through the house. Was puzzled, wondering who could be visiting so late, especially since his mother had mentioned she would be away all month. The persistent ringing continued, and holds out his sister's necklace toward the child, who immediately recognizes it and becomes both excited and emotional. Is filled with relief, knowing he has found the correct necklace. Tears begin to stream down his face as she expresses her gratitude. Wondered aloud if had been searching for the necklace all this time, and explained that she knew it would rain the following day. Despite this, remained curious about why she had risked so much on his behalf. Admitted that witnessing his trouble made her want to offer her assistance. However, she confessed that she couldn't tell which necklace belonged to, so she gathered several possible items instead. Then offered the collection to the little girl, but the child shook her head, indicating she did not want any of them. Was able to lift their spirits and keep them from being overwhelmed by sorrow. Walked over to where was standing. Even though expressed her worries, he found it impossible to dismiss his curiosity. The boy brought up the autograph event that she had talked about before. Wanting to be a part of his world, he told her he wished to attend the autograph session. A day that might have ended in sorrow was instead brightened by the warmth of smile. He found himself determined not to cause her pain, yet he struggled with the desire to remain true to his own emotions. Wished to give the gift to the girl, hoping to express his emotions. Princess observed that the boy treasured other people's feelings even more than his own safety. The boy expressed regret for causing her the trouble of looking after him. Just as he was about to walk away, the cat girl reached out and touched his face, causing him to start bleeding. Fortune seemed to favor him now, as if he carried a touch of luck wherever he went. Wondered aloud whether she truly possessed such power, prompting to burst into laughter and teasingly question who he imagined she could be. The princess mentions that in addition, stroking a cat may cleanse the soul. Stretches out on the ground, exposing her stomach. Observing this, the boy reflects. Finding's request endearing, heard her claim that her fur was the softest in the whole town and asked for a gentle pet. However, turned her down and chose to stroke instead. The following day, the boy considers how was unable to ask him to the autograph session, leading him to doubt that she would have the courage to make it to the love confession wall. Because he would only face difficulties if she revealed her feelings before they graduated, it appeared that he was. Looked toward the boy and asked if he could spare a few minutes. She explained she needed to discuss where the autograph session would be held. The event was set to take place in a building 4 blocks away that housed a giant bookstore named. Mentioned that the autograph session would follow the scheduled talk. The discussion featured a group of 4 individuals, consisting of 2 well-known figures and 2 newcomers. Following the talk, each newcomer proceeded to their separate autograph sessions. It turns out that the girl's mother will serve as the mediator in this situation. Felt anxious about her mother's opinion of her, fearing that she might not be accepted or liked by her. Remained confused about the reasons behind her mother's departure. Despite this, her longing to see her mother again grew stronger, though she felt uncertain about how she would begin the conversation. At that moment, called out to, mimicking the action of holding a microphone, and playfully inquired about her thoughts on experiencing her first autograph session. Looked puzzled and asked what an autograph session was. Explained that it would help to practice in advance so she could feel more at ease when the real moment arrived. Replied that she wouldn't know what to say until she was actually standing before her fans. Hearing this, grinned and declared that he was already one of her fans. He struggled to picture what it would be like to see his idol in person each day. Although she had always wished for this moment, she had never paused to truly consider what it would feel like. Now, he was actually on his way to meet her at an autograph session. Later expressed just how much he respected and looked up to her. The evening before the big event. Previously, he had shown up at her autograph signing without an invitation. It seemed that things had never progressed that far, and now the girl felt extremely anxious. However, she reassured herself that it didn't really matter, since she doubted she would ever be brave enough to admit her feelings to him. Wrapped her arms around the boy without warning, leaving him stunned by her unexpected gesture. Overcome with excitement at the thought of attending his autograph session, the girl collapsed onto the floor in delight as she tried to contain her enthusiasm. She tries to act as if nothing is wrong, insisting that she simply wants to carry on. An overwhelming desire compelled her to sit down on the floor. Any concern she once had for the interview faded away, and before she knew it, the entire day had slipped by in an instant. When requested to attend his autograph session, she responded with casual indifference, as if it meant nothing special to her. She explained that her editor had given her a few tickets recently, and now she happened to have an extra one with her, which she could offer to him. Accepts the ticket, expressing his determination to attend the autograph session. The girl beams with happiness, her excitement clearly visible despite her efforts to contain it. She reminded him that holding a ticket meant he was expected to leave. She uses the moment to suggest exchanging phone numbers, though she masks her interest by acting as if it doesn't really matter to her. Wanted to know why chose to disregard the warning she had given him. She expressed her unease to him, admitting that something about the situation didn't feel right. Despite everything, the boy made up his mind to leave. The boy admitted to himself that his actions may have been impulsive, yet when he glanced at the girl, he found it impossible to hold back. Princess looked at with confusion, uncertain about his meaning. Puzzled, inquired if their conversation wasn't about the tights. The princess quickly clarified that the topic was something else entirely. She is talking about the autograph event, and is curious about's reason for agreeing to attend. He had to realize that her life would be over if she ever admitted her feelings to him. Despite understanding the risks involved, the main character remains unwilling to disregard some emotions. As the sun rises, steps out of his house alongside his sister. Meanwhile, secretly watches from behind a slightly open door before making her way over to join them. Upon arrival, is taken aback to see accompanying as she had anticipated being alone with him. Wanting to hide her surprise, acts casual and remarks on the unexpected meeting with both siblings. However, easily picks up on the fact that had been waiting out of sight by the door. Asked for confirmation about whether the autograph session was scheduled for that day, and expressed her interest in attending. She wanted to attend, but her commitment to the math club that afternoon kept her from going. She felt disappointed that only her brother was allowed to take part in the event. That day, sensed very little from thoughts, possibly because was nervous during their conversation. Wanted to know if they had practice sessions, and the girl confirmed that they did. She questions whether she remembered to gather all the things she required. As something slipped out of his bag, noticed and bent down to retrieve it. Curious, he examined the item, questioning in his mind whether it might be a planner. After a moment, he informed that she had accidentally dropped it. The girl snatches the small planner with urgency, her expression twisting into a scowl. Became startled, and the narrator reacted as well. Expressed her gratitude to him. At that moment, tried to get her attention, pointing out that her bag had dropped onto the floor. She placed her bag to one side and reached for the small notebook lying on the floor. Tsundere interest in the matter began to grow. The girl announces her intention to head to the teacher's lounge. Because she plans to leave ahead of schedule, she realizes there are some matters she must settle. As swings his locker door open, an object tumbles onto the ground. He bends down to retrieve it, discovering that it is a photograph of. Catches sight of it and finds himself puzzled about its presence. Without warning, emerged behind. She explained that she now had to stay after school because it was her time to handle the lost and found announcements. Mentioned that he had heard reports of more lost items lately, and as he spoke, handed a photograph he had found. Questioned whether the photo belonged to him, but clarified he had simply discovered it. Upon seeing the picture, remarked that it appeared as though someone had taken it in secret. He wonders aloud whether she has any clue about who might have done it. The main character. The student suspected that the teacher had caused the situation, yet decided it was wiser to keep this thought from the girl. Felt uneasy after realizing that someone had snapped a picture of her without asking for her permission. She chooses to hand the photo over to, carefully slipping it into his pocket. His voice echoed in a cry of desperation. Explained that she refused to keep the photograph as it had been captured without her permission, yet the boy insisted he had no interest in holding on to it either. After some back and forth, reluctantly agreed to take possession of the photo. He pondered the girl's ease around boys their age, admiring her lack of hesitation. The intrigue he once felt about's diary faded away. Later, after spending some time in the classroom, the girl quietly departed. As the conversation unfolded, was overwhelmed by a wave of intense anxiety. He checks the clock and decides he still has a lot of time before the autograph event starts, though he thinks arriving ahead of schedule would be wise. The boy takes his leave from, and she returns his farewell. Observes that the book she's holding is the romance novel authored by. Wondered aloud if the boy recognized the book, and he responded that he had finished reading it not long ago. She observes that reading choices are surprising to her. She notices with interest that writing style closely resembles that of. Pointed out that she had discovered something remarkable, urging the boy to pay close attention to the girl's pseudonym. She explained that by rearranging the letters, it would spell out. The boy became curious about what had been up to, while remarked on how amusing the coincidence was. Soon after, and parted ways, bidding each other farewell. He wondered about the way was using his name, but with his worries now gone, he felt a sense of relief and newfound lightness. The girl once thought to herself that if attended the autograph session, the chat no longer mattered to her. As this realization settled in, the main character began to relax and feel at ease. Just then, an unexpected call from interrupted the moment. She contacted him for the first time, which made him curious if she required his help. He feels anxious at the thought of making a phone call. Suddenly, a voice speaks to him. She wondered if the person before her was, and introduced herself as a member of the editorial department. Buddha recalled the name, recognizing her as the woman who had accompanied recently. Believing that was the one calling, he wondered what the woman wanted from him. Questioned whether he was aware that was supposed to join the chat that day. The boy acknowledged that he knew, so decided to be direct with him. She explained that if things kept going this way, would not be able to participate in the chat. It turned out that had already said she couldn't attend. Puzzled by this information, requested that clarify the situation for him. considered that she might have lost something while on her way, a red notebook. When she realized what had happened, a wave of anxiety washed over her, leaving her unable to face anyone in public. It seemed that she ignored everyone who tried to speak to her. Because of this, depended on to locate her notebook and deliver it before the meeting began. The boy felt completely lost about where to begin his search, so the woman explained that when she, as was making her way out, she accidentally collided with a fellow student in the corridor. It was possible that her notebook slipped from her grasp at that moment. At that moment, wondered about the consequences if he failed to bring the notebook. Responds by explaining that she plans to tell everyone is unwell, and as a result, the chat and autograph session will be called off. Nodded in understanding, promising to search for the notebook, while expressed gratitude for his assistance. Knew that missing the presentation could mean she would lose the chance to be reunited with her mother forever. Everything now rested on his shoulders. The boy felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Feels a surge of indignation as she realizes she has let go of such a crucial notebook. He checks the lost and found, but his search comes up empty. The student reasoned that if the notebook had been dropped at school and someone else had already taken it home, finding it would be hopeless. However, if the notebook remained somewhere on campus, he realized he had no idea how to begin looking for it. Still, he knew he must keep questioning as many people as possible until time ran out. His voice echoed through the loudspeaker as she expressed her gratitude to everyone for their efforts that day. She reminded the group to make sure they hadn't left any belongings behind before heading home. While listening, paused to consider that this might be a good opportunity to request a favor from. Despite everything, the main character makes their way toward the heart of the school. By remaining in that spot, he becomes aware of the thoughts of everyone nearby. Meanwhile, announces over the microphone that anyone who finds a red notebook should immediately come to her room. Curiosity about the notebook began to spread among everyone. Struggled to process the overwhelming number of voices surrounding him. At that moment, the boy overhears a conversation mentioning a red notebook. The individual's tone rose sharply, carrying a force that suggested annoyance with the announcement. Despite that, there was something about it that seemed somewhat recognizable to her. The boy accidentally collides with a door just as two girls are stepping through it. He wonders aloud if anyone has come across the red notebook, but both people appear confused and have no idea what he means. As peers into the room, he notices seated quietly inside. She expresses her frustration about him, questioning the girls so openly in the hallway. She reached out with the notebook in her hand, wondering if this was the one he needed. She explained that she had found it lying in the hallway while everyone was on their snack break. Hearing this, expressed his eagerness to return the notebook to its rightful owner and asked if she could hand it over to him. Shakes his head, unwilling to accept the notebook because it does not belong to him. The boy attempts to clarify that requested the notebook from him. The woman responds firmly, stating that she is only permitted to hand the notebook over to herself. In the past, someone received a personal belonging by mistake, which led to serious complications. From that point forward, only the rightful owners would ever see their lost belongings again. Attempts to convince the teacher to hand over the notebook, hoping his request will be granted. She declines, firmly insisting that the rules must be followed. As a teacher, violating the rules could lead to trouble for her and possibly prevent her from remaining with. Her fixation ran so deep that picturing her existence without the other girl seemed impossible. Then, the woman insists that the small notebook will only be handed over to its rightful owner. Found himself puzzled by how challenging the situation had become. It seemed unlikely that he would find a solution to the problem before the conversation began. He considered reaching out to, yet had mentioned that she wasn't well enough to speak, leaving him uncertain about his next move. Suddenly, a slip of paper fluttered to the ground. He pulled a picture from his pocket. As the woman saw the image, surprise spread across her face. Felt a jolt of surprise at his own carelessness when he dropped the photo. While retrieving it, he caught the woman's silent wish, sensing how much she treasured the photograph and believed it didn't belong in his hands. Among all the pictures she owned, that one meant the most to her. Meanwhile, thought back on how fortunate she was to have captured such a moment in the first place. At that moment, Cooter notices the potential of the photo and begins plotting how to use it to his advantage. The woman wonders aloud about the photo, questioning if it features. By mistake, she deleted the memory from her notebook, leaving only the photograph as evidence. As the teacher glances down at the notebook she holds, a clever plan forms in her mind to exchange it for the photo. At that moment, stands on the verge of the greatest exchange he has ever made, trading the precious photograph for the notebook. Without warning, emerged from behind. He inquired whether the boy had come across the notebook. He had arrived to give back the key to the room where the notebook had been kept, and he repeated his question about whether had located it. At that moment, she noticed the notebook being held by the teacher. Explained that she had discovered the lost item and expressed her delight at recovering it. Remarked that the teacher insisted the item could only be returned to its rightful owner. The woman, clearly anxious, attempted to justify herself by referencing the school's regulations. Moved closer to her, her demeanor turning intimidating. Understood she had to obey the school's policies, recalling how she had previously been caught using her phone in the hallway and had faced consequences for it. The woman firmly declares her determination, making it clear that she will not let go of it under any circumstances. Another employee reaches out too, notices that the woman was unwilling to hand over the notebook, even after the young girl insisted. He then studies a printed photograph of that he holds. He thinks about how uncommon it is now to see photos developed on paper, since most people just take pictures with their phones. Because the woman had previously been traumatized after being discovered using her phone, she likely chose to use an analog camera instead. The teacher mentioned that she had already replenished her supply, but it would still seem strange for her to wander the halls carrying photographs. This suggested she might be concealing something. Found himself curious about the item the teacher constantly held. Soon, the boy spotted a notebook she always brought with her in the corridors. Time had run out, leaving him with no choice but to stake everything on the line. He grabs the attendant's notebook and makes it clear through his actions that he'll open it unless the woman hands over the small note. Stared at the notebook in confusion, needing a moment to process the situation. Once realization struck, anxiety rushed over her as she struggled to comprehend how had found out about the photo of hidden inside. Determined to recover the notebook no matter what, she reached out her hand. Unsure of his motives, she explained that returning the notebook was her priority. The boy insists with a solemn expression that he means what he says. A sudden noise draws gaze away from her conversation with a teacher. Becomes anxious, determined to keep the girl from glimpsing the photograph. In a moment of panic, the teacher quickly hands over the notebook, urging him to give it back to, and mentions that likely understands the contents hidden within its pages. Unaware of his ability to read minds, she realized she had to choose her words with great caution. Expresses concern for, explaining that he noticed the woman gazing at pictures recently, which led him to that conclusion. He also mentions that is an especially adorable girl. Hearing this, the woman finds herself feeling slightly more reassured about him. She experiences a mix of embarrassment and relief, thankful that remains unaware of her connection with. The boy hands her the picture of, warning her that it would be bad if the young girl were to see it, so she should stop her current actions. Expression falls as she lowers her gaze to the photograph in her hands. Hesitates briefly before flipping open the notebook. As he does, countless pictures of spill out onto the floor. The woman instructs to give these photographs to, making it clear she will leave the task in his hands. Expresses her hope that can soothe worries by telling her that all the pictures came from the stalker. After wrapping up her discussion with the teacher, the girl asks to walk her home. Instructed the boy to tuck the photos into his bag and hand them over to her when no one else was around. Meanwhile, mentioned that he had managed to retrieve the notebook. He hurried out, promising himself that he would see the following day, all the while realizing that he was already behind schedule. He hurried toward the staircase, eager to ascend. As the boy loses his balance, a small notebook slips from his grasp and lands on the floor. Swiftly catches hold of him and surprise flashes across face at the sight before him. When arrives in haste, stands ready, anticipating his appearance. The boy extends the notebook toward her. Before she can look inside to confirm if it belongs to, he gently requests that she refrain from opening it. Understanding its personal nature, he insists that only should see its contents. The woman agrees to deliver the notebook to herself and asks to join her. He resolves to erase the contents of that notebook from his memory, believing it is the best way to protect the girl. As she steps into the room, the woman expresses regret for being late, yet the others reassure her that there is no problem. The room was crowded with playful kittens. Wondered aloud about the sudden presence of the cafe cats, but the truth was that these cats had mysteriously shown up and taken over the area, causing a delay in both the broadcast and the planned event. The situation seemed amusing, as if the cats had intentionally arrived just to stall things. Grateful for their unexpected help, expressed his thanks to the kittens as they eagerly ran toward him. In their excitement, the kittens toppled over his bag and soon began fishing out every coin from his wallet. Once they had the money, they departed. Admitted that witnessing someone being robbed by cats was a first for her. Meanwhile, the cat princess burst into laughter at his expense and pointed out that stalling for time would come with a fee. Walked in and looked around, searching for. The woman noticed her arrival and hurried over, concern flickering across her face as she noticed the disarray of hair. However, its focus remained solely on retrieving her notebook. The woman instructed the girl to open her eyes, pointing out that the notebook was in front of her. Overjoyed, the girl eagerly grabbed the notebook. Curious, she wondered aloud where it had been and explained that the girl had left it at school but had retrieved it for her. The moment understood that had been the one to recover her notebook. She lunges at him with a frightening intensity. The girl seized the boy by the arm and demanded to know whether he had peeked inside the notebook. Although the boy she shouted accusingly, insisting he was lying and had absolutely taken a look. The main character firmly claimed he hadn't looked at anything within the notebook. Meanwhile, the girl believed that if he had witnessed her actions, she wouldn't be able to go on living. Tears welled up in his eyes as she questioned whether he was telling the truth. At that moment, gently tapped the back of his head, urging her to settle down. Explained that hadn't even allowed her a glance inside the notebook, insisting it was private. There was no way he could have seen what was written inside and suggested head inside now to fix her makeup. Wondered if the boy could enter the studio, but he admitted he could not. In response, she handed him a special access card, allowing him to observe the chat. Afterwards, she departs alongside. While in the bathroom, thinks about how much time has passed since their last meeting, which causes his anxiety to grow. His mind drifts back to earlier worries about her mother's possible reaction to her. Remained hopeful, certain that everything would turn out well, and that, after their meeting, conversations would return to the way they once were. Meanwhile, the boy spotted his mother lurking nearby, clearly searching for something. Surprise flashed across her face when she realized he had seen her, and he questioned her about her actions. Urged her to hurry and head into the studio, but she insisted she only needed to use the bathroom first. Ignoring his warning, she began pushing on the emergency exit door. Concerned, the boy asked her to stop and pointed out the sign, explaining that she was about to use the wrong door. Despite his warning, she kept trying to open it. Explains that is waiting for her inside the studio. The woman nodded in acceptance, a deep sense of remorse weighing on her for her previous actions. Believed she had lost the chance to see her daughter again and wished the girl would just erase her from memory. Announced she was heading home, reassuring herself that the group conversation would go on in her absence and that she could make amends later. Feeling a pang of hunger, the woman mentioned her appetite and invited to join her for a bite to eat. She expresses a preference for spending time with him instead of attending the chat. The boy grows restless, confused by the strange woman's words. He suddenly cut her off, raising his voice to accuse the woman of being incredibly selfish, and insisted that she'd go inside to speak with her daughter. Despite everything, the woman still feels unworthy of speaking too. The boy remains puzzled by her fear. At that moment, the main character points out that it isn't up to the woman to determine if she can see her daughter. Had long searched for reasons behind her mother's decision to leave the family, wondering why she seemed to favor the company of books over being with them. Often found herself lost in thoughts about her mother, yearning to uncover more about her past. Driven by this curiosity, she continued to write, hoping her words would bring her closer to the truth. Yet once again, seemed ready to disregard some motions. Before he could continue, a woman stepped in, cutting him off to question how the boy had come to learn such things. He attempted to hide it, insisting that he merely pictured it as something else. The main character was advised to exercise more caution, as he seemed to be responding to the unspoken emotions within her heart. Meanwhile, the woman expressed regret too, explaining that she was unable to see her daughter. She left her family behind and immersed herself in books, making herself someone others avoided. She was the kind of mother who had earned the resentment of those around her. Raised his voice, insisting that the woman was mistaken and that did not harbor any hatred toward her. The woman remarked on the boy's gentle nature before turning once more to leave. No matter how hard he tried, realized he could not persuade her with his own words. Only his voice could reach her now. Frantically, rummaged through the bag he had carried ever since was hurt. He pulled out a bundle of papers and offered them to the woman, urging her to look at them before she went. The papers turned out to be an old notebook. The main character believed that if could explain, the woman would finally understand. After reading that, found himself filled with strong dislike toward her. The woman wondered about the contents of the notebook, and the boy explained that had used it to write her stories back in elementary school. On the final page, there was a brief tale titled 2 Dragons. The story described a blue dragon and a red dragon who quietly lived together on a mountain. The pair enjoyed each other's company and shared a joyful life together. One morning, the blue dragon awoke to discover that the red dragon was nowhere to be found. He set out on a quest to search for the red dragon, driven by a lingering fear that pushed him forward. The story delves into the blue dragon's doubts and vulnerabilities, drawing readers in with its compelling portrayal. Ultimately, their paths crossed once more, allowing them to come together and enjoy a joyful life side by side. When he first came across that story, he recognized it as one about 2 dragons, yet the romantic aspect failed to capture his interest. What truly stood out to him was her deep, unwavering love for her mother. In truth, the two had gone their separate ways, yet within the story they remained united and content, leaving the narrative without any surprising turns or deep feelings. His heart ached with a deep yearning, forming the core of the love story. The woman clutched the notebook, realizing that it contained some emotions, and understood that despite everything that had happened, his love remained. Then requested that she search for her daughter. Admits to herself that she avoids meeting her gaze, held back by a lingering fear. She had spent most of her life in solitude, and to cope with her loneliness, she began crafting romantic stories that offered her a comforting escape. Writing held a special magic for her, allowing her mind to escape into the world she longed for. Without even realizing it, she found that the love stories had become a defining part of who she was. Her efforts received recognition, and she started making money from her talents, which helped her develop greater self-acceptance. In time, she encountered a person who embraced her true self, leading to their marriage. As their daughter grew older, she found joy in witnessing each new stage of her child's life. Surrounded by the affection of her family, she felt immense gratitude. This period brought her unparalleled happiness, as if she were living in a dream. Although she remained unaware, solitude was the only time she found herself able to craft romantic stories. Her writer's identity felt powerful, yet she dreaded the thought of facing her vacant surroundings once more. For several days, she grappled with a difficult decision. She could either abandon her role as a mother or let go of her true self. In the end, she decided to embrace her life as a writer. She worries that seeing might take away her talent for writing love stories. Felt a deep fear at the thought of returning to her former life, fully aware that her anxiety was irrational and unjustified. Concealed from view, she watched the scene unfold. Her mother moved toward the emergency exit and pushed it open. Meanwhile, attempted to reach, yet the woman gave no response. She requested that he inform she was only able to write when no one else was around. Urged to remain near her daughter, reminding him of the importance of their closeness. He called out loudly, pleading with her not to go ahead. The moment echoed a painful memory, recalling a time when she had abandoned her daughter before. Now, once again, the woman decided to face things by herself. As she moved away, another voice cried out, asking her to stop. Stood facing her mother, whose sudden surprise was evident the moment she noticed her daughter's presence. As approached, the woman's reaction made it clear she hadn't expected to see her there. As a young child, she struggled to comprehend the reasons behind her mother's departure, and she wondered if her own actions had made her unworthy of love. Water separated the two, but now they stood one in front of the other. The woman inquired whether had overheard their entire conversation, and in response, the girl echoed her earlier statement, explaining that she was only able to write when she was by herself. The girl wonders aloud whether that was truly why her mother left them behind, lowers her gaze, offering a quiet apology. In this world, love stories mean more than anything else. Wondered aloud about the meaning of family to her. She had always believed there was an important reason for her feelings. She continued to write, always hoping to find what she was looking for. She had spent her life seeking to comprehend her mother. She noticed others spending time with their mothers, which made her feel isolated. She found herself alone, her mother's book serving as her sole companion. Wonders aloud about the reason she is not required to pick one path between starting a family and pursuing her passion for writing romance stories. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes, streaming down her cheeks as her mother offered another apology, her voice filled with regret. Fear had settled over her life. Despite having her family close, the feeling of emptiness left her deeply unsettled. She worried that meeting once more might take away her ability to write. The girl suddenly cried out, insisting that her mother's job was not interesting at all. The woman stands frozen, overwhelmed by disbelief. She expressed confidence in her writing abilities, believing her work was skillful. However, disagreed, commenting that her stories always felt gloomy and sorrowful. None of her mother's books written after moving out appeal to her. Every novel published since her mother left has filled her with sadness. She longs for her mother to return to creating stories that bring joy. As attempts to explain her feelings, reminds her that she doesn't have to set boundaries for herself by herself. Assures that since she is also a writer, she can offer guidance if her mother ever needs it. She found that she could communicate with her mother, inspiring her to craft even more captivating stories. As they connected, her mother realized just how talented she was when she had support and wasn't working by herself. Walked over to the woman. She embraced her mother tightly, pleading with her not to leave her side again. At that moment, tears began streaming down both of their faces. Doubted she would ever embrace her daughter once more. They crossed paths inside the studio. The interviews and conversations proceed smoothly. Inquires if, understands the reason behind his decision to begin writing novels. Recalls that once confided in him, explaining that she started writing to figure out why her mother devoted herself to novels rather than her own family. However, admits that he has always struggled to fully grasp this motivation, and he notices that writing style closely mirrors her mother's. It is clear to everyone that possesses the skills to become a talented writer, but as long as she continues to pursue style in her own work, her growth as an author may be hindered. Since reuniting with her mother that day, however, she admits to herself that advice had been wise, and she feels grateful for having the chance to reconnect with her daughter. However, she knows it will still be a while before she is ready to start another novel. Just then, comes up behind her, reassuring her that there's no need to be concerned, because now the two of them are in the business of selling books together. If her mother was unable to write, she was able to assist, which allowed both the chat and the autograph session to proceed without any problems. The main character wondered aloud why the girl hadn't left In's car. The girl explained that her mother was present as well, and it would have felt awkward if they all had to leave together. Nodded in understanding, and revealed that he had brought something for her. He extended the worn notebook to her, explaining that he had always intended to give it back eventually. Explained that he wanted to make amends for what happened before, which was the reason he brought his notebook along. The girl appeared confused, unsure of what he meant, while the boy admitted that he had said hurtful things to her before she moved away. However, he added that if she truly didn't recall the incident, then there was no need for concern or regret. Remembered the moment when the boy dismissed her story as uninteresting. The girl explained that he must have misunderstood something, so there was no need for him to apologize. Curious, the boy asked why she had cried. Everyone had showered her story with praise, often comparing it to her mother's work. No matter what she wrote, her classmates always encouraged her to continue. Yet, stood out as the first person to admit he didn't find it interesting. He was also the first to consider the story's true quality and question if it was truly appropriate. Instead of viewing her as daughter, he recognized her as her own person, which filled her with joy. Still, she realized she had been writing novels in hopes of understanding him. At that moment, her mother's abilities did not measure up to those of that individual. She realized she could never truly comprehend her mother's thoughts. Tears streamed down her face as she faced the harsh truth. Although she was able to see that person on that day, she sensed an opportunity to bridge the distance between them. She felt grateful, too, for putting so much effort into persuading her mother, believing that none of it would have been possible without his help. For a brief period, neither of them speaks, and soon after, gently rests her head against the boy's shoulder. She felt completely drained after the long day, overwhelmed by everything that had taken place. Once the event finally wrapped up, and parted ways, exchanging farewells before heading off in different directions. As they departed, the interaction appeared straightforward to everyone else, yet felt a deeper significance behind it. They appeared to have an opportunity to relive those moments from the past. Entered the room and gently roused her brother from his sleep. He wondered aloud about how much longer the other person intended to remain asleep. She wondered aloud whether her brother planned to skip breakfast. When he gave no reply, she decided he must be as lifeless as a corpse. Grumbled about her behavior, insisting she shouldn't cause trouble, yet his own cheeks flushed a deep red and felt feverishly warm. After the event, he fell ill and had to step away from school to recover. Stood on the sandy shore, patiently waiting, when someone arrived and apologized for being late. Walked over, urging everyone to pick up the pace so they could start swimming. She wrapped herself around the boy's arm, but he protested, taken by surprise, reminding her that they weren't a couple. The girl claims that they are a couple since she has already admitted her feelings to him. He agreed to the offer. The boy could not understand what was happening. At that moment, another person appeared. A figure emerged and seized both San's arms, questioning whether the boy had forgotten that he was also dating her. The boy quickly sensed that something about the encounter felt off. He knew that if someone of the opposite sex confessed to him, the outcome would likely be unfavorable. Another individual soon entered the scene, Princess, who demanded that ignore the others and focus solely on her. Frustrated, told the older woman to stop causing trouble. At that moment, realized that the entire scenario involving a confession leading to his demise was nothing but a fabrication. He understood his fear had been unfounded. Suddenly, the enormous cat appeared in front of him, and as the cat slowly opened his eyes as he emerged from his slumber. He remained asleep well into the afternoon. The persistent ringing of the bell finally roused him, prompting the boy to rise and open the door. Standing there was, her face bright with happiness at the sight of him. She quickly put on an act and spoke to him in a playful manner. She mentioned that she had heard the boy had not attended school. She had brought him some snacks, wanting to show her kindness. Felt she had gone to unnecessary trouble, but the girl reminded him that, as neighbors, looking out for each other came naturally. She longed to look after, yet she feared becoming a burden to others. The boy, feeling a surge of empathy, wonders aloud if the girl would like to enter. The girl's face lights up with happiness, though a hint of confusion flickers in her expression. The main character found himself puzzled by his own feelings. Despite standing nearby, he noticed the usual nervousness was missing, possibly due to the strange dream from earlier. Mentioned that he had planned to fetch some cooling sheets anyway, so he appreciated that she had brought some for him. The girl. She reached out her hand, offering to put it on for the boy herself. He sweeps his hair back from his forehead. The circumstances left everyone feeling uncomfortable and self-conscious. He shut his eyes, unable to face the girl standing so near. She wondered aloud if he was feeling any better. The boy expressed his gratitude to her, and then noticed a balloon shaped like a heart floating above her. The girl began to speak to him, mentioning that she had a confession to make. As she spoke, a balloon appeared, displaying the number 10. At that instant, realization dawned on. He recognized that the numbers signaled the countdown. Princess explained that anyone who wore that suite would face death upon hearing a love confession. Whenever someone was on the verge of confessing, a countdown of 10 seconds would suddenly show up. As soon as the heart with the ticking countdown materialized before his gaze, a wave of terror seized him. As he glanced at the timer, a chilling sense of mortal fear washed over him, its presence almost tangible. Overcome with hopelessness, turns and flees from the scene. He stumbled and fell to the ground, prompting the girl to check on his well-being. The boy's desire to live remained strong, as the clock's ticking suddenly came to a halt. Flinched in surprise, but quickly relaxed upon realizing that was unharmed. Meanwhile, the countdown pressed on without pause. The main character considered whether distracting the girl might prevent what was about to happen. However, he realized that the cat princess had never said anything regarding that possibility. He realized he needed a way to divert her attention. Memories came rushing back of the time he had accidentally fallen onto her notebook. As he picked it up and flipped through its pages, he discovered that she had written about her happiness after meeting following school. On her walk home, she had briefly wished to see him again, and soon after, he had invited her out for coffee. Curiosity tugged at her as she wondered if shared her feelings, her heart beating faster at the thought. While they spent time together, he had asked if she wanted to listen to music, then handed her one of his earbuds. The two had then found themselves gazing into each other's eyes, sometimes glancing at each other's lips. Only one hope remained for him, to divert attention and bring the countdown to a halt. The main character suddenly exclaimed that he had read the contents of the girl's notebook. She feels a surge of fear and, confused by his words, desperately tries to understand his meaning. Explained that he had only witnessed the incident because he had accidentally tripped while going down the stairs. As it hit the ground, the object sprang open. She wondered if he had read it, and the boy admitted he only glanced at a small part. Wondered aloud which page had caught his attention, and replied that it was the one discussing the E. A sense of panic washed over the girl, and she started to scream in fear. She looked like a demon fighting off an exorcism, her features twisted with agony. Overwhelmed by hopelessness, she collapsed onto the floor. Had discovered her hidden diary, filled with her most disheartening thoughts. With her secret out in the open, she felt as though death was her only escape. The imaginary counter she always saw in her mind had vanished entirely, making her believe there was no longer any reason to confess. The girl comes to understand that her feelings for are much stronger than she first thought. The boy worried that she might assume, since he had discovered all the secrets, there was nothing stopping her from admitting the truth. He believed the choice was to eliminate the problem completely from its source. Remarked that having someone read her idea book would probably be very irritating for her. Fear crept over the girl as the main character kept talking, mentioning how most writers disliked having their secrets revealed. She wondered if he even noticed that the notebook was actually a diary filled with her, not notes for a romance story. Started to suspect that the boy might be rather clueless. She silently scolded herself for acting recklessly. Realizing that moving too quickly could lead to rejection and cost her the boy's friendship, she decided it was time to rethink her approach. Instead, she considered spending more time with, hoping to create happy memories together before making any confessions. Once their bond deepens, she finds the confidence to express the depth of her love for him. The girl gave his forehead a quick flick, making it clear that this was his consequence for looking through her notebook without permission. Returned home and mentioned to her brother that had come by for a visit. His eyes widened in surprise when he noticed the two standing before him. His cheeks flushed with embarrassment at what was happening, yet reassures that there is a meal for her as well. With that's most frightening day finally comes to a close, Princess notices the countdown is real and seems to trigger some unpleasant memories for her. She beams with happiness as she enjoys her snack. At least for now, won't be making any confessions soon. The boy thinks to himself that if it weren't for those unusual side effects, he might have been the one to confess his feelings. Grumbles, suspecting that can somehow read his thoughts. Then lets him know that if he ever feels troubled, he can seek her out since she will always be there for him. Now the girl prepares to reveal something too. She produces a small ball and presents it to him. Curious, wonders aloud whether the object is a piece of candy, but the girl quickly clarifies that it is much more than that. The woman presented a piece of candy, explaining that if the boy tasted it, he would gain the ability to sense money nearby. She also mentioned her own need for funds to improve the place. The boy declined the offer, but the woman attempted to reassure him by insisting the candy was completely safe. Despite everything, Cuda no longer wished to take on any supernatural abilities that served no real purpose.